Welcome back to the podcast there, Curvis. This is Jemmy, your host and producer from Flintstone Media with Curve the Cube. This is the 54th episode, and it's a very important episode, especially for this time of year. I sit down with Chairwoman for the annual Walk Like Mad and MADD Fort Lauderdale 5K, Heather Geronemus. Heather and I have known each other since high school. We both went to Pinecrest together, and she does so much great work for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And this time of year, there's a skyrocketing number of incidents, I won't say accidents, but incidents that just lead to too many tragedies. But, you know, we're all on the roads more, we're traveling, we're spending more time with family and friends for the holidays. And along with a lot of driving, we also are doing a lot of drinking. And so drunk driving incidents happen more and more around the holidays. So I really wanted to rush this episode out to you. I really wanted to sit down with her, and it's a really great episode. But Heather is such an inspirational woman. Her work extends from here to DC, where she sits with lawmakers, and she's a top fundraiser for MADD, and she also does some work with other organizations because she's like this super selfish human. But she's awesome. She's just awesome. And her whole passion for this movement was sparked by her own personal tragedy when she lost her father, Robert, back in 2009. He was killed by a drunk driver who made just a series of dumb, bad decisions that night. And so she shares his story, not the drunk driver's, her father's. She shares her father's story and what it was like to lose him, and what it was like for her family to go through that, and how she is changing such an extreme negative into such a powerful positive. So for anyone who wants to get more involved with charity work or philanthropy, if you want to better understand the epidemic of drunk driving, if you've been an offender of DUI, or you just need the inspiration to get through your own super tough time, even if it has nothing to do with drunk driving, you can relate to having something impact you so suddenly. And this podcast is for all of you out there. So she also shares tips on how to get home safe and how to plan properly, including really great conceptual themes that will get you thinking and hopefully hit some switches in your brain. She also blew my mind with some new technology that's out there that can really stop drunk driving in its tracks once they figure out how to get it into every car. So head to walklikemad.org. Make sure you hit 2 Ds, walklikemad.org/Fort Lauderdale, and see how you can get involved as a corporate sponsor or as a participant. She is hosting the next MADD Walk Like Mad 5K in Huizenga Plaza, which is off of Los Olos Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale, on April 24th. But now is the time to sign up, get your team together, and start fundraising. So be sure to get involved. Follow Heather on Twitter at Geronemus, Geronemus, and also Instagram, same handle. And check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/mad- now there are 3 Ds in there, MADD Fort Laud, FORTLAUD. And get involved, and it's a really super important cause, and she's just a really super impressive woman. And this episode of Curve the Cube is sponsored by a brand new podcast sponsor, my brother Gerard. Under his company, GL Esquire Consulting, he will give you, yes you, sound legal business advice. Whether you want to start your own business, need guidance regarding the business you own or work for, give him a call. And he might be embarrassed by my saying this. I think it's a big deal. And I'm super impressed by him. He is a graduate of Harvard. Yes, Harvard. And he's also a graduate of Columbia Law, which is one of the top 3, I think, law schools in the country. He's worked for some of the world's largest, most prestigious law firms in the world. I mean, he's super impressive. He even worked with Johnny Cochran, which I thought was pretty awesome. And he's worked with clients in a variety of industries, from financial services, agriculture, music production, fashion, technology. And he's happy to bring all that expertise and lump it all together and help you with your business needs. So reach out to him, give him a buzz. His initial consultations are always free, but if you mention Curve the Cube, then he'll offer you his friends and family rate, which is awesome. So reach out to him at 786-531-9834, or email him at Gerard, standard spelling, Gerard, at GLESQ, stands for Esquire, glesqconsulting.com, glesqconsulting.com, or on his Facebook page, GL Esquire Consulting LLC. Easy to find. And I'll also say you can also follow him on Twitter now, too. So J. Gerard Inc. on Twitter. Basically, if you follow me at Flintstone Media or Curve the Cube, then you're sure to see some retweets. And thank you to DJ John Hitta for my music beds, as always. And please follow Curve the Cube as well on all the interwebs. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. Well, maybe not all the interwebs, but a lot of them. So follow, subscribe, like, you know the deal. And, also Tumblr. I can't forget Tumblr. So with that, I'll say sit back and relax and enjoy the 54th episode of Curve the Cube podcast with superhero human Heather Geronemus. Enjoy.
Curve the Cube will now initiate.
Well, hello, my dear.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So good to see you.
So good to see you, too. It's been so long. Oh, my gosh.
It's so long.
I don't know.
Forever.
How are you?
I'm well.
Oh, my goodness. Is that like a notebook or something?
Yeah, just stats from, just in case.
Things.
You know.
Oh, okay. Gotcha,
Things I should know. Things I probably do know, but I always.
You're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
So how's everything going? You're so busy. Like, we're both, like, so busy. I was thinking it's a miracle that this worked out. I apologize for last time.
No.
I was so upset. I'm like,
It was such a, going from work to getting my grandma to like having a nice dinner is such a project anyway.
Right,
that
right,
it probably
right.
would have been too much.
Right.
Even though I did want to get it in before Thanksgiving.
I know.
But it's totally fine.
It's totally fine.
Totally
you look
fine.
amazing.
I do?
Yeah, you
I've
do.
been running around all day today like crazy. I took the day off of work to get some things done for MADD, and also because I just haven't taken enough days off work this year.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to burn through some days off, but I also have a ton of stuff to do. So
Right.
like, taking a couple days each week, and then like the week between Thanksgiving or Christmas and New Year's, I'm taking totally off. But I'm not going anywhere because I didn't plan anything.
Right.
Like I need somebody to plan a vacation. Right?
That's me. I never go anywhere because I never plan. I know.
So I don't know, what was I even thinking? So anyway, I was with the Colonel Pollock, who's our co-chair for the walk that I planned.
Yeah.
And then the DUI sergeant, and they're like always in uniforms. We met with the chairman of the board of Broward Chairs Foundation. I was gonna go in like shorts.
Amazing.
So.
Yeah, because I saw that you're doing something with. I saw like a couple tweets today, and yeah. So tell us, like, it looks like you're getting involved, and I mean you're always involved, but my goodness, there's always something new coming through the pipeline.
Yeah.
For you.
So I don't even know what did I tweet about today.
It was something with like I saw a couple of that you were telling people about DUI checkpoints.
Oh yes.
And then I didn't know if it was Broward Police Sheriff something.
So tonight is there's a checkpoint tonight. The purpose of checkpoints is really not to arrest drunk drivers. It's to show the citizens that were out there protecting the streets.
Right.
Obviously, if a drunk driver comes through there, we're going to arrest them.
Right.
But the purpose is to these like high visibility law enforcement operations, like checkpoints and saturation patrols, show the citizens that they're there all the time.
Yeah.
Not just tonight. The DUI task force is out there every night of the week, every day of the year, looking for drunk drivers, but this is just a time where law enforcement agencies across the county will come together.
Yeah.
This one is Pembroke Pines, supported by Broward Sheriff's Office, because they're the primary law enforcement agency that deals with DUI in the county.
Gotcha.
So that's what's going on tonight. So we have that, and we were spent a lot of time just getting together and working on the walk that comes up in April.
I know.
Working on sponsors for that, because we were the most successful fundraiser in the country last year. So now we have to be
so exciting. Yeah, like a big thing to live up to, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I went to the national conference in June, and all these affiliates that have executive directors were asking me how do you do it, and they're like, and a couple of them that are very successful, like, we're gunning for you, and I was like, great, but you have a whole staff.
Right.
I don't actually work for MADD. I do this because I'm passionate about it.
Right. So tell us about MADD. Tell my listeners about MADD, because I'm hoping they're all already familiar, but just in case.
So I think that MADD is definitely one of the most recognized brand names, in the country.
Right.
But I don't know if everyone knows what we do. So we were founded 35 years ago by a mother who lost her daughter to a drunk driver, and we've been behind all of the most important legislation that impacts road safety. seatbelts and raising the drinking age to 21.
I didn't know that. Seatbelts even. I didn't know that.
If you think, I mean, it's well before our time, but
right.
If you think about it, in the 70s, people were driving around without seatbelts.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Put the baby in the dashboard. You'll be fine.
It'll be fine. DUI wasn't even really convicted in the 70s.
Really?
And we were behind moving the legal limit to .08, and
what was it? Was there a legal limit?
There wasn't a standard.
Okay.
So if there was, it was higher.
Yeah.
MADD was of course behind that lobby, and then all sorts of other things that impact drunk driving. Like now, the big thing is getting ignition interlocks for first-time offenders in every state.
There you go.
Since we launched the campaign to eliminate drunk driving 3 years ago, we've gotten ignition interlocks for first-time offenders in 25 out of the 50 states. So the goal is to get all 50 states to have that in place. But the really interesting thing is it's not just interlocks anymore. We really have the technology. The technology exists to stop drunk driving in the car. So
can you explain?
I can.
Before you explain, I'm actually curious. I've always wanted to know. Can a drunk driver get someone else to breathe into
the interlock?
I mean, not that I want to give anybody ideas, but I mean, just always been curious about that.
I suppose that if you were trying to get around it, you could. I mean, I would hope that the other person
would have more moral fortitude than that.
Exactly. You would hope that if you got to that point. I mean, I actually was watching I think it was the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority was looking at there was a video, and it was a demonstrative video, but it was telling there's a gentleman who's met this young woman, and he's like in his head, she's talking in his head, and he's going, should I tell her? They get into the car, and he has to blow into the device, and she's like, oh, what is that?
Right.
So I think that's it's the social stigma of drinking and driving seems to still be a little widely accepted, but the social stigma of actually getting into a car and seeing somebody with an interlock device is, I think, still pretty strong.
I think if you do participate in that then that's a different level than maybe just seeing someone walk out and get into a car, and there might be a party that kind of like doesn't want to act, but if you then have to breathe into it for somebody, you're either then breathing in so they can get themselves home, or breathing in so you can get into the car with them. Neither one of them do you want to be responsible for. So hopefully you're right. People won't.
So I would hope that would be a no. I suppose there are ways to get around anything if you're that creative, but I would hope that the other person wouldn't participate in that.
Right. So explain this technology that can stop drunk driving in the car.
So
very curious.
Through either your what's emitted through your palms or your breath, but not into having to blow into a device, just having it being the cone of space around where you would breathe. The car would not turn on if you're over .08
really?
as detected. So the technology exists today. It was unveiled at our national conference.
Crazy to me that
really. I mean, if you think about all the things that have happened with technology, it's really progressive, but it's out there. I mean, look, Google is working on a driverless car.
I know. I think they already have it.
Yes.
I think actually I saw something about like a week ago, a driverless car got pulled over.
Yes. So
it kind of makes you wonder, what was it doing wrong?
I know,
kind of terrifying.
So the person who is the director of the driverless car program actually sits on the National Board of Directors of Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Interesting.
It's a really an amazing collection of people who are interested in traffic safety, and then also victims like myself who come together to support this cause. So what we unveiled at the national conference is this technology. Now, of course, just like anything else, when technology, the first computer took up like an apartment.
Totally
huge. So and now we can carry a computer in our hand.
Phone. Exactly. I mean, or your watch. It's crazy.
Even in your watch. So
and it does a lot more than that house-sized computer ever thought it could do.
Absolutely. So it will take some time for the for the technology to become small enough and affordable enough that it can be in a car. But cars will absolutely be the cure to drunk driving. We know this. That's what's coming. But it's still 5, 10, 15 years away. It's not tomorrow.
What's the relationship been with car manufacturers for this type of stuff?
So we'll see where it goes. I mean, there's a lot of partners in creating the technology. And I believe that anyone that I talk to that has kids, and you can weigh in on this, that when your child gets to be that age, I mean, you wouldn't think of anything else.
Oh my God! I instantly became terrified.
Exactly. Every person that I talk to that has a child that's like 8, 9, 10, that they're starting to think of
Right,
like
right,
driving.
right.
They're like, absolutely, sign me up. Where what with the the idea is that it'll be an option in cars, just like leather seats or power windows, or I guess everyone has power windows now, but
for the most part, yeah. Like my friend Scotty, his son Eli just got his license about a month ago, and he just, the look on his face was like, because it's frightening, because there's only reality, no matter what you're talking about, there's only so much you can control. So like even if you train your kid to the best of your ability, there's still other people out there, and there's still other influences out there, and it can be it can be tough. So the more technology, as long as it's really sound technology and doesn't, I don't know, have like a Terminator moment where it comes alive and does its own thing, I root for it. I'm all the better.
Absolutely.
So would you be able to share, would you be open to sharing, I mean, I know the story behind it, but your story and your connection with MADD is very personal. Would you be open to sharing that and talking about that?
Absolutely. So almost 7 years ago, I was out with my friends on a typical Saturday night out, enjoying some cocktails. I wasn't driving.
Right.
Just not because I was so vigilant then, but because I just didn't, that's what I was going to do. So
right.
And I started receiving phone calls from people in my family that I actually don't even talk to.
Right. That's a really big red flag.
Things were wrong. Something was wrong, and I received a phone call that changed my life. I learned that my father was in a crash. I didn't know at the time. It took a long time for somebody to tell me over the phone that my father was killed.
Wow.
But my father was walking across the street on Brickell after giving a speech at a medical conference dinner, and he was...
Because he was a nephrologist, a kidney doctor,
Yes, and he was, he's leaving that dinner, and it was a nice January night in South Florida. I mean, if we get those this year.
We'll see.
You'll see. And they were walking back to the hotel, and he was struck and killed by a drunk driver that blew a red light and struck my father, and he flew like 75 feet in the air into the middle of Brickell, and the person continued to drive, only because of a civilian who saw the whole thing happen, that followed him and flagged down an off-duty officer.
Good for that civilian.
That then called an on-duty officer. They pursued him, and I can't really prove this, but I always think from reading the police report that the Miami Marathon was the next day, and that area is part of the marathon course, and it listed that there were barricades, and that the guy had to keep making turns, so it was eventually like boxed in. So I always think that perhaps the marathon had something to do with them apprehending this guy. Right. So I mean, that really changed my life.
Absolutely.
I don't remember all the days and weeks right around that time, but there were
a blur.
Yeah. But Mothers Against Drunk Driving proactively reaches out to victims of drunk driving. So after a few times that this woman Nancy Leffel had called me, she's a victim advocate for MADD, and I was like, oh hey, I can handle it, but I was like handling it for me and for my mom and for my dad's mom.
Right.
At some point it got to be too much, and I was like, let me check that voicemail, and I called this woman, and I didn't really know.
I'm sure
what
that was
she
the second
do.
phone call that changed your life.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know I didn't really know what I was calling for, or what she could do for me. But I remember vividly sitting in the car for an hour talking to her. Like I was driving around, just thinking I was having a casual conversation, and I had to pull over and sit and focus on it. And we talked about all sorts of things, and things like that I would never have known about, like. State of Florida has a crime victims assistance fund. It's a national program, but to help people that some people need help paying for funeral costs. In my case, it was therapy. There are different things that you wouldn't even think of that exist out there that this woman was there to help. And of course, when it came time to go to prepare for and to go to the trial to look at the person who killed my father.
I can imagine that's a whole nother level.
And this woman Nancy, who's actually retiring, and I'm like a little shaky about that. This woman Nancy was there with me every step of the way. So it was really, and she is still today. A couple weeks ago I received a letter in the mail because we accepted a plea for the person to go to prison for 6 years.
Has it really been? Oh, you mean back then you accepted? I thought you mean it was only just happening now. Okay,
no, it was back then, and it was a little bit less than a year after the incident that he went to prison for 6 years. So, and of course I knew that it was coming, but a couple of weeks ago I received a notification in the mail that he would be out of prison within 90 days.
Wow.
And I fell to pieces again, and of course Nancy was there. So, and you never know. I mean, I do, obviously I talk about it a lot, and I and I do a lot for Mothers Against Drunk Driving every day of my life.
Right.
But you never know when it's going to hit you, like in a wave that you can't really understand, because there's just no answer to why. Like and I don't think that losing anyone is any easier if there is. But if you can look at a disease, or you can look at a cause that you couldn't control, but this is something that someone could have controlled. And that person, he made the decision to drink, and then he made the bad decision to get in his car.
Right.
Then he made the even worse decision to flee from the scene after he killed somebody.
Right.
It's just a series of compounding bad decisions, but all of them could have been stopped with that one decision to have a designated driver when he was going out drinking.
I think I've actually, you just brought to memory, I think I've seen a commercial when I was a kid, or high school or something, that was similar to that, where it played out this whole scenario of someone drinking, getting into their car, killing somebody, and then all of a sudden, for lack of a better word, the scenario kind of sucks back through time, and instead they turn their keys over to somebody else, and it was something like, and then the tagline, whatever they came up with, ran across the screen. And you think of, there's certain commercials from when you're a kid that, when you're a kid, you're innocent, and so I'm thinking of the commercial that'll play throughout history of. I learned it from watching you, the whole that or here's your brain on drugs and stuff like that, and it makes you, when you're a kid, you're like, whoa, that's a reality. And so remember that drunk driving commercial being like,
I have to find that.
Whoa, that's crazy. I just remembered it, so I'm hoping it's not a false memory, but I'll try to Google it and try to find it, or YouTube
I'm sure
it or
it's out
something.
there. I'm sure it's out there.
But not everybody who's a victim gets involved the way that you've gotten involved. I mean, what was the impetus for you? But was there something that really spoke to you and made you say, I need to take a step into this? And what was that? What were those early days and early steps for you?
So there were a couple things. One is that I received this amazing support, and when I looked around, there wasn't. I remember when we were at Pinecrest, MADD came in and did the assembly every year, like clockwork, and whether or not you are totally tuned in, or you thought this has nothing to do with me because I don't drink. I didn't drink in high school, how could that ever impact me? Which surprisingly enough it did. I realized, I looked around and I didn't see that part going on. So we were supporting victims 24/7 here in Broward County, but just things change and organizations change, and we've gone through recessions, and Mothers Against Drunk Driving had lost a lot of money at the national level, and had fallen on hard times, and some of that trickled down to at the local level, not as many local offices and not as much infrastructure. So at the time there was no local office. We were doing programs in schools as much as we could. We were doing what we call a victim impact panel, which means other victims going and speaking to offenders. Those were going on, and there was a really, really strong volunteer victim base here in Broward County. I mean, some of these people have been volunteering for this organization for 20 or 30 years, and with amazing heart, telling their story. But it wasn't very organized, and we were only really reaching a specific population. We were mostly supporting each other, and we were mostly, and then doing things as needed. But there was no aggressive outreach going on. So I experienced that, as I was kind of getting to know people at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And of course, at the time, from January when my father was killed to December when the person went to prison, I was very ensconced in the trial and all the hardship that goes with that. Now we also, I don't know if you remember the mates from school, Adam and Jared lost their father 6 weeks after I lost my father to an impaired driver. And that it was more drug impairment than alcohol. But I just remember in that time we were all, I mean, I'm still close with them, but we were very kind of tied together through that. And I didn't know it when it happened either because I was so involved. But over the summer I discovered that, and it just shows you how close it is to you. I only say that because it's two people that you knew from the same period in your life that lost a parent to a totally preventable issue. So I digress. But getting back to the MADD issue, at some point in that year, I was at an event where we recognized law enforcement. So of course law enforcement was, even though MADD wasn't as strong here, law enforcement is always enforcing DUI, and we were there to recognize them. And the president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Laura Dean Mooney, was there to, as the representative, to thank the officers. She told her story about losing her husband when she had a baby in very vivid description, and she talked about getting involved, what she did immediately, and then it was almost 20 years later, getting involved at the national level and becoming the national president, and the importance of talking to people and thanking people and educating people. And I thought, and I was just sitting there like, I have to do something, you know? And I didn't know in June what I was going to do, but we had this walk, what I kind of refer to as like the test run, Walk Like MADD, back in October of 2009, and I went to it and I observed that as well. And what I observed was that we were still just serving that small community of victims and law enforcement. You know, there were a couple hundred people there. We raised some money, but we weren't getting to the people that weren't already impacted. And that's been my whole thing this whole time with MADD, where I think that it's very easy for people to turn off and to say, you know, MADD is for Heather because she lost her father to a drunk driver. So how can I make that connection between, you know, 2 out of 3 people are impacted by drunk driving in their lifetime. So it's not just for me, it's for everyone.
And to just raise the awareness, even if someone's not impacted yet.
So I don't want them to get there. You know, I don't want anyone that hears your podcast or sees me on TV or reads an article to ever be impacted. I mean, nobody should have to come to this awareness like I did or like my family did. So that was kind of the beginning of, you know, of course I brought in a lot of money that year, so I was approached about getting more involved in that particular event, and you know, I took some time to think about it, but we restructured it and we made it, you know, I made it what it is today, which, you know, 6 years later, it's one of the most important community events that goes on in the spring. Everybody talks about it. I met with somebody today who's like, oh yeah, I always see it on the news. You know, how can I support? You know, it's now what I thought of then, you know, where people are trying to come to me to help, like, you know, reaching out and seeing how they can help. And that's a really incredible moment in time for me, where, you know, people who, you're talking about corporations and individuals and people who have never been impacted coming together and seeing how they can support so we can save lives on the front end. I mean, if we could put victim services out of business at MADD, we would be totally happy. In fact, that's our tagline. We for the first time ever, we unveiled a tagline, which is no more victims. So, you know, last year there were just under 10,000 victim fatalities, but over 290,000 victims of drunk driving, so people who were injured, and you know, there could be countless more people. And then at any time of the day, of the month of the year, there's hundreds of thousands of people driving drunk. And those people aren't caught yet.
Well, interesting you say that. Last night I was driving to pick up my son, and I was stopped at the red light at Military in Atlantic in Delray, and next to me, and this was weird, this was a really strange thing to even witness, but I was the second person in the line on the left lane, and next to me was an SUV that all of a sudden pulled forward and hit the guy in front of him. And my initial thought was, oh, he thought traffic was going for some reason, you know. But then he reversed and he did it again. And then he reversed and did it again. And then it became clear it was road rage. And then when I saw his face, you know, I don't know what he was on, but he was on something. You know, something. So it's interesting. It made me think, you know, drunk driving isn't necessarily just the person who is too impaired to drive properly. It's also the person who is so impaired that now their emotions are taking over in a way that's unsafe.
Absolutely.
You know, and so whether this was the guy cut him off a mile earlier, or who knows. But it made me think, well, that's, the timing's interesting for this podcast today. And then I also remembered maybe about 6 years ago, my parents and I went to South Beach to visit my brother where he lives. He says hi, by the way. He's actually sponsoring this podcast. And we were driving back on 95, and there was this big tan van that was ahead of us, swerving around. I mean, literally at one point he went across all 5 lanes. And, you know, my dad was driving. His instinct was to get around him and get in front of him as quickly as he can. And at one point, the guy kind of came back around. He missed us by inches.
Oh, my God.
But close enough where, as I was passing him, I could see his face. And it was just, he was unaware of the world around him.
Oh, my God.
You know, clearly impaired, highly impaired.
Of course.
And less than a minute later, in the rear, I'm turning around, I can see that he has hit somebody. And that person went straight into the median, and then his van flipped over several times. And, you know, I told my dad to pull over because I was an EMT, but then my mom wouldn't let me go, whatever. But anyway, my point is that whether you're a direct victim and you've been killed or injured,
right,
you're, for lack of a better word, secondary victim, a family member, so to speak, loved one,
right,
or you witness something like this, it's the type of thing that, everybody witnesses it or sees it or has it in their lives at some point.
Yes.
There's a point where you're at a party and you have to make a decision, whether it's you're the one who's been drinking too much, or your friend has been drinking too much, or you're in the service industry and you have to make the decision.
Yes.
It affects everybody.
Absolutely.
What have you seen has been the impact that MADD has had over the years as it's grown and gotten into more communities and stuff? How's the organization impacted?
So just on a purely organizational level, I mean, we've moved the state office here to Broward County. So our office is in Weston. We have a state executive director who sits in Broward County. We are just announced that we're hiring a local executive director. So if anyone that's listening,
apply.
Yes, I need that person in place.
What might that person look like? What are the qualifications?
Well,
I mean, what are you looking for?
Nonprofit experience is not 100% necessary, but someone that would be passionate about the cause. It doesn't have to be someone that's impacted. I mean, it actually probably better if not. I'm not sure, but somebody that is really passionate about safe streets and saving lives, and has enough experience either in the nonprofit world or the corporate sector to run it, manage a team, raise money, all the things that are important in the nonprofit industry. I'm really passionate because nonprofit work is thankless. It is. Plus, that person has to work with me, and I can't further that. That might not be easy. But so from the organizational standpoint, there's that, and then there's our partnership with BSO, which you alluded to earlier. The sheriff's office has really, in the last 3 years, taken us on. My meetings used to be in an office building that was one of our partners, but it wasn't really centralized, and it just wasn't as impactful. Now the sheriff's office has taken us in, we meet in their media room. The sheriff pops in from time to time. One of the executive director of law enforcement, Colonel Pollack, who I talked about before, is my co-chair in this effort. The sheriff is our honorary chair. I spend lots of time with the DUI sergeant and go to all these enforcement events, and we're really banding together with organizations like Crime Stoppers and the Sheriff's Advisory Council and all of these to make a big impact. So it's not just from the staffing side, but we also, the thing that's important to me is that we have victim and non-victim volunteers. So it's not just, again, that idea that it's just my problem because I was impacted. I have my committee for Walk Like MADD and MADD Fort Lauderdale, which is totally unique across the country, is made up of mostly non-victims. I brought together the people that could do the job that we needed to do. When you look at any other committee for any other event, you don't necessarily have people that are impacted by cystic fibrosis. I sit on the advisory board of cystic fibrosis. Thank God that's not in my family. But I'm concerned about people that have cystic fibrosis, and I know that there's a way to cure, so I serve. And that's just a unique...
You're such a terrible person. So selfish.
I hate that. Maybe a little too much shopping, but other than that.
How can other super selfish people get involved? I mean, because you mentioned like corporate sponsors. So let's start there. How do corporate entities get involved with sponsoring that?
So it's very easy to just contact me. Email me at madd-@gmail.com.
Okay.
But so you can visit our website.
Make sure that's 3 Ds. Don't miss a D.
3 Ds, exactly. I have people do that all the time.
I'm sure. I don't.
You should have thought of something better. But sponsoring our event is easy. The event is on April 24th, so we're right now in the high time for getting sponsors committed, and then they'll have time in the new year to get teams signed up and really get their organization behind them. So you can visit our website at walklikeMADD.org/Fort Lauderdale. All the sponsors that are currently supporting us are there, and then the sponsorship documentation is also there, so you can see what the different levels are. We've got lots of great sponsors on board already, and then we've got lots of room for more people. Last year we had over 60 corporate sponsors that supported our efforts.
That's incredible.
Really,
congratulations.
Thank you. I started with like 4.
Called blood, sweat, and tears, my friend.
Exactly. But it's really cool to put it all together. So I am involved in a lot of other organizations. I'm on the board of trustees of Pinecrest now. I went and I presented to the entire upper school, and I met the president of Students Against Drunk Driving, and they have a team in the walk. So it's really about getting everyone in the community to come together. And even people, we talked about, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, like everyone has had that moment in their life, and not everyone has made the right decision all of those times. And I am guilty of that too. Not not since my father was killed, but there are times in my life that I can think back to, which I'm ashamed of, but that I can say I didn't make the right decision there. And I've had people come to me and say, I can't come to your event because every once in a while I have too much to drink and I drive. And I'm like, well, just stop doing that and come to my event.
Right. You know? Talk to some other people, you'll learn. Exactly. Like, maybe you won't do that anymore. Right. Don't make the decision to remain ignorant and keep drinking and driving. Instead, make a decision to change. Yeah.
I spoke to, so I'd never done this before, but I spoke to a group of offenders at a victim impact panel, and it was.
Is that like in a prison, or is that?
So after, if you've been convicted of a DUI, you will be ordered to attend one of these victim impact panels. It's a program that is supported by Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It also has a little bit of a financial benefit to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but it's court ordered. So in Broward County, if you're convicted of DUI, or even if you plea out a DUI, you have to attend this victim impact panel. What it is a couple victims tell stories of what happened to their family,
right?
And it's usually people that do it. It's it happens once a month, so it's usually the same 3 victims because it's always different offenders. And I just went to observe. I'd never gone to it before because a lot of times for me, the fundraising and the advocacy is very easy, but some of the more more emotional aspect of it, I've shied away from. It's still very raw.
Right.
So I went recently, and it turned out, of course, on the night that I went, 2 of the speakers had bailed out, and I was asked to speak.
Wow.
But I always like to consider my audience before I speak, so I didn't have that chance to do it, but I felt like I should just do it.
Yeah.
So,
well, clearly it was meant to be. I mean, I feel like your first time going,
right?
And then the 2 bailed. It was meant to be.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't. I think I totally blew it, but it's okay.
Oh, stop it.
But what I was thinking afterwards, when I was on the plane, when I couldn't do anything about it, I was on the plane the next morning, and I thought, and this is something that I would share with these offenders, but anybody. So that the drunk driver that killed my father obviously changed my life, in a way that I can never recoup. I mean, I can never get my father back. But I would like moving forward for that story to change other people's lives in a positive way.
Right.
So if everyone that hears this, the next time that they make that, are in that moment where they haven't planned ahead for a designated driver, they haven't left their car behind or their keys behind, that they think of my father or any of the victims that they hear. So that so it's kind of like he changed my life for the worse, obviously, but hopefully that drunk driver can change other people's lives for the better because they'll think about this story.
Let me ask you, what was your father's like? What was he like? So maybe people can understand, and maybe it gets them a little bit more. What was he like? Tell me about your dad.
Well, my dad was. This gets into this whole thing of saying one life is more important than another, which
absolutely not.
But my father was a genius, and he was a healer, and he was a world-renowned nephrologist, and he dedicated his life to healing others. And one of the women who volunteers at my event every year, as at our registration desk, is the wife. She's the widow of a man who my father kept alive for 15 years. He had 2 kidney transplants and shouldn't have lived for a year, and my father kept him alive. And there are countless stories like that. When people my last name is obviously uncommon, so people it's always, are you related to this Geronemus or that Geronemus? And if I met a woman when I went to an event who just started crying because my dad, she wasn't supposed to be able to have children, and she was a patient of my father's, and he got her kidney situation correct, and then she was able to have kids.
Wow.
And I don't even know medically how one connects to the other, but these are the stories that I hear all the time. And
maybe she had whatever medication was preventing her, and now she didn't need it, something like that.
And so it's just stories like that and things like that. And my father was researching. He had already he was part of the team that created a treatment for kidney disease called CAVHD, which is still used today. And he was researching other things. He was kind of at that point in his career where I think perhaps he was going to slow down a little bit on patients and move on to research, even though he never quite slowed down. He just did both.
Also totally selfish.
Exactly. Totally. So he was working on more life-saving things. So it's he was a person that was really committed not just to kidney disease. All these doctors came up to me with these stories about how he would ask them about their cases, like an ocular surgeon was like, oh, your father figured out the key to this case that I said, what are you talking about? How do you even have time for that? So he was he's a person that was just really committed to healing people and to science. it's a shame that he didn't get to see all the research through and the patients. I mean, some of those people seem just as impacted as my family, because kidney disease is a long-term thing. So he had patients that he had served for 20 years, and we'd been here for a long time at that point. And I mean, the funeral was like packed. They like shut down the road. And it couldn't even fit everyone in that wanted to come in and pay their respects. And again, it's still. There's a fellowship that the Florida Society of Nephrology awards every year in my father's name to promising young nephrologists. So next year they're gonna do some special presentation, and so it's always in the background. And it's great that his legacy in that respect can live on in that world. And my work is really, of course, to remember him, but more to just really create a vision, future with no drunk driving. Because I mean, we know it can happen with the cars and with people. I mean, the options are out there, right? I mean, Uber is back.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are some of the options? I mean, I think I forget what it is. There's a service I think it's every New Year's I hear about it, where it's free. But they're constantly.
So AAA does what they call Toe to Go, and they do it. They publish it at the beginning of the year, and they publish all the dates, and it's usually like the high concentration times for drinking and driving. So your Labor Day, July 4th, St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo, and then this time between Thanksgiving and New Year's is the deadliest time on the roads for drunk driving, which for me is really it's just like hard to reason. So it's the time when most people are going home and spending time with their families, and I couldn't even imagine
celebrations.
And the celebration. But then could you imagine if that celebration ends in the knock on the door? And so this is, but it's all about. I mean, the bottom line is the best thing to do is to make a decision before you're gonna pick up a drink.
Right, you're still sound.
When you're still sound, exactly. I mean, I'm in my office, and on Monday, like I usually when I get in the office, I need to like just heads down and focus. But when I like hear the chatter around the office, people are planning on Monday or Tuesday what they're going to do on Friday night. That often involves drinking, and no judgments. I enjoy an alcoholic beverage every now and then. But the plan should just be how are you getting home?
To also include that.
And our CEO at Ultimate has said to people for Ultimate celebrations, we'll take care of your safe ride home with no questions asked. So if you have to leave your car where you are and take a cab back in the morning, just put it on your corporate card, and
that's great.
Nobody's going to ask you a question about it, because that's we care about our employees, and we want everyone to be safe and back for their families and back at work the next day.
Absolutely,
but it's not it's something that people really need to focus on and to think about when you're sober, when you're making the plans. What if you're having a party at your house? How can you accommodate for people? Like, tell them you can stay here if you're going to drink.
Exactly.
It's just about really thinking it all the way through, and I think that's where people don't go. They don't go to the last, to the get home part. And so there is, AAA Tow to Go in these high traffic times, and there is in South Florida. There's a company called Sal's Towing, which stands for Save a Life. They lost their son to a drunk driver, the owners of that tow company. So they will give you one tow in a year free. They will get you safely home.
Gotcha.
Do I really think, I think these are great things, but I don't really believe that this is not the kind of prevention measurements.
Right.
People need to be aware, make those plans.
It needs to be more ingrained into the process of making those plans, and that's a cultural thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like last night I had to go to 3 events. I only, because of the weather, made it to one, but my original plan, because one of those events was a wine tasting, was that I was going to drop my car at home and I was going to Uber every place that I went, and then I was going to get, partially because I was going to have a glass of wine, and partially because dealing with valet parking everywhere is a really big pain. When I got out of the place that will remain nameless, my car was still running an hour later in front of the place with the hazard lights on.
Stop it.
I mean, the good news is that I didn't have to wait a half hour for my car. The bad news is why did you leave my car running?
Right.
But anyway, that for the whole week, my plan was I knew that was my plan. Now, should you have to be as informed as I am because of what happened to my family that's what you need to do? Absolutely not. Tomorrow night I'm going to the Winterfest Black Tie Ball, and I know that I'm going to drink, so I know that I'm going to use a cab or an Uber.
Right.
I just know that. Or if I wanted to treat myself, I would have stayed at the hotel, but it's really close to my house, so I'm not. But it's just that, and I have so many friends that have not been impacted by drunk driving that tell me, lots of people tell me stories now, of course,
one of my girlfriends she has like a premium membership with Red Cap, because when her when her husband and her go out, they have 2 young children. One of the children is severely, or now he's doing great, but he had a lot of disabilities. So when he was growing up, she knew that if God forbid something happened to her, what would happen to him.
Yep.
So that's what raised the awareness for her.
Yeah, well, that's actually
children.
Similar to me. I mean, I've always been fairly responsible. I was an EMT in college, so that you see things,
Right.
and et cetera, you carry it with you.
Yeah.
But becoming a mom really changed it for me, because that's when I knew I cannot imagine a world where he grows up without me. I just can't do it.
Right.
Or where he grows up with me behind bars. Either way, and I wish it didn't take either a personal tragedy or having children or whatever it is to have that moment.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes people can it kind of becomes blended in the background because it happens so often.
Yes.
That even it takes even an extraordinary case to even make your eyes open. I think the last time I heard of something that made me be like, what? Was I'm sure you're aware of the case. I don't remember where it was, but it was the affluenza case. Texas. There you go. And I remember when it happened, just being completely appalled, and my mind was blown. But then it was like Dateline or 2020 that ran the story again, like an update version, but they ran through the whole thing again, and that's when I got all the nitty gritty details of it.
Right.
And you just think like this cannot be okay.
Right.
This cannot be okay.
Absolutely.
And granted, that was, I don't even know how else to describe but the word extraordinary, even though every case is extraordinary in its own way. But that's the kind of one that made the whole country kind of pause for a minute.
Right.
But every case should make the country pause for a minute.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you bring that one up, because there was an article today that there were videos of that young man playing beer pong and drinking, and they're investigating whether or not it's actually him. Because it's,
recently,
like today or yesterday. So because his
he
probation,
learned nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, of course he learned nothing, because he got a slap on the wrist.
Right.
His probation does prohibit him from imbibing alcohol or drugs or anything. So they are looking into it. But I mean that, and I would say the John Goodman case in Palm Beach
that
also
infuriates me every single time I see that asshole on television trying to get out of his punishment. I want to jump through the screen and throttle him.
Exactly.
I have had enough of him. Not John Goodman, the actor. Okay, if you Google John Goodman, Florida, and you guys will know exactly what drives me, infuriates me. Absolutely. I mean, talk about a sense of entitlement.
Right.
No sense of remorse. I can only imagine what that family is going through as long as it's been dragged out. I mean, there's so many things about it that drive me
And every once in a while it bubbles up and he's out there trying to get
just
off
like
of
a week
these
ago.
things. Exactly. And the problem is that then people think, people dismiss the whole DUI thing, like, oh, well, like, you'll hire an attorney, you'll get rid of it, it'll go away. First of all, it stays on your record forever. So that's not really the case.
Yeah, tell people the full impact on your life if you have a DUI.
It's not just, I think that there's this idea, and it's been floated around, that it costs like $10,000 and you can get rid of a DUI. Like, yes, you're hiring an attorney will probably cost you $10,000. Can you probably get a like misdemeanor DUI where you're driving and nobody was injured, but out,
like just pulled over kind of
but
thing.
Still, I mean, there are repercussions. I mean, it's gonna follow you around. You may get fired from your job. You may not be able to get another job. I mean, if you're, God forbid, if you're a student in high school that's listening to this, and that's going to stop you from getting into college. That's going to change your life. It's not something. While people still kind of have a casual relationship with drinking and driving, institutions don't. I mean, it's unacceptable. And it's interesting because I wonder what the life of the person who killed my father will be like when he gets out of prison. Mostly because I hope that he offends and he goes back. But
I was going to ask you, have you ever? I'm sure you've had a thought of being face to face with him.
Again,
do you think you
I
ever?
saw him.
Right.
I
Do you think you would ever? Well, do you think you ever would talk to him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I would like to observe some of the things that are involved in his probation or volunteering at a trauma center. One is speaking to students, and I am first of all, I'm just curious about like who's facilitating that and how is it happening, but also I would like to hear it, because when he stood in court after my stepmother and I both gave very sad and distraught victim statements.
I can only imagine.
He stood up and pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket, so he felt like he was going to say something, like that meaningful. He just couldn't.
Right.
He couldn't remember it, and instead he looked down at this piece of paper and he read the words, "I'm very sorry for your loss." Folded up the piece of paper, didn't make eye contact with us, and sat back down. So he didn't take any responsibility for it. His attorneys wanted us to be grateful that he was going in before the holidays. And, when I'm never ever going to have a holiday with my father ever again. And he showed zero remorse or responsibility. It was like he was doing us a favor by getting up and saying those words. So I'm absolutely curious to see if the time in prison changed his perspective on that, or because if he does have to make these presentations to children, what is he going to say? Because I did see,
because you were afraid of the wrong impact.
Exactly. And also, I don't know that I want to talk to him. I'm not sure about that, but I would absolutely like to see if he has realized what he did or what he took away. So I'm 100% interested. I don't know how it'll play out, but I'll be there.
When you did your victim impact statement recently, did you speak to the offenders after? What's that after?
That was weird.
Moment like? Yeah, because I can only think awkward. Like, what is that?
So I didn't really know what to expect. Again, I'd never been there before. So I was standing with the GI sergeant and the person and another sergeant from Pembroke Pines, who he always speaks at that event. So he was neighbors with one of the victims that speaks. So she speaks about her family, and he speaks basically about living across the street from her and remembering her from that perspective, but then also all of the other enforcement related issues that he's encountered in his career. So I was standing like between two cops, which is frequent for me these days, and people spoke to me, and they hugged me, and they touched my, like wanted to shake my hand, and it was weird. Like I was like, why are you hugging me? And some of them, because we did mention the walk event in April, and some of them were like, we'll be there. So I mean, maybe
are there offenders who get involved?
Not that I know of, but that doesn't mean no.
Right.
I really don't know. And I mean, again, I welcome everyone. If somebody wants to help the mission, which is to end drunk driving and to support victims and to support law enforcement, and now we've encompassed. We've always supported victims of drug driving, like our friends, but we put it explicitly back into our mission. In the very beginning of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, it was there, and when we needed to become laser focused on drunk driving, we did, and now we're not saying we're ending drunk driving or saying fighting drug driving, because we don't know what all the factors are in that. It's not a simple 0.08. It's not we're still working to figure out what those things are. But the bottom line is that most of the time it's a cocktail. And here in Broward County we're facing something even worse, which is this whole flocka epidemic, and that is something that's really, it's out of control, and we are like ground zero for it.
Really?
And when you were talking about that person yesterday, it made me think of some of the things that I've heard about people that are on flocka, because they're like paranoid and delusional, and their bodies overheat, and but that could that's always like, it's just one more step, so it's again like making a bad decision to making several more bad decisions.
Right.
So we the more people that can support the mission and that can help us make positive change. If there was a victim that an offender that genuinely had an epiphany in their life, that whether it was going to prison or just going to a victim impact panel and came to me and said, I want to help and I want to tell the story from my side, I think it would be really interesting and impactful. So I will not turn anyone away from helping this organization because of my belief that it truly impacts everyone. I think that everyone should be able to help. I think that there are probably some victims that would have a different perspective than I do, and of course, as a leader of the organization, I would always defer to them and respect their opinion. But I think that it's important to hear from both sides. The NFL's program, again, we partner with the NFL on a national level, and Dante Stallworth was he killed someone, and the family didn't want to pursue it, and there was a very hefty financial penalty, but there wasn't, he didn't go to prison for a long time because the family decided not to pursue it. And then Delaney Walker lost his cousin, his aunt and uncle, to a drunk driver. So the NFL program that trains the NFL players is the two of them. They, they're videoed, but they're,
They kind of joined up together.
Exactly.
Really
to talk about it, and so Dante's perspective is the offender perspective,
right.
and Delaney's perspective is the victim perspective. But both of them are equally important. And what's great about that is that the players and staff are learning from someone that's within their circle.
Right.
So I think one of the hardest things sometimes is, can you reach the people that you're speaking to? Like, even when I went back to Pinecrest, I was like, it's been a little while since I've been here. I don't
It's changed a lot.
It's changed a lot, and for the better. But just purely from that, like, will they think that I'm just like some old lady, like, and I really thought about how to connect with them and what worked for me, and it seemed to be impactful because a lot of them came up to me and talked to me about it after. Was talking about about every time I'd been on a Pinecrest stage before that my dad was in the audience, and like putting him in that space. And this would be the first time that I was there that he wasn't there, and it seemed to really resonate because everybody in that audience hopefully has a parent that dropped them off at school that day or sent them off to school that day, and
right.
resonate with
Well,
that.
because and also because you never know if you're the end up being an offender who the victim's going to be.
Absolutely.
And again, not to say any life is more important than any other life, but I remember, I've heard a story from years ago of a mother who was driving impaired, and her daughter was headed home, and
Oh my God.
she killed her daughter. I mean,
Can you imagine? I'm sure that's true. I've not heard that one, but there's, so there's statistics that show that like 60% of the time when children have, when you're talking about like middle school age children who've said that they've been in a car with a drunk driver, and 60% of the time that drunk driver is their parent or responsible adult.
Right.
And I mean, you see it all the time. You see people out drinking and then like, I got the kids in the car.
And it blows my mind.
Absolutely.
Blows my mind.
Absolutely. And there's a woman in Broward County who's a very influential woman who I know, she was in the car when one of her sons was killed by a drunk driver. And I mean, that'll change your life forever.
Of course.
No one is worse or better than the other, but these things they never go away.
Is there I'm trying to think is there like a bond or kinship that develops from working so closely with other people who've had similar experiences?
I think so. I mean, I think that's really what our victim services is all about. I mean, there's just some things that you go through that you just can't. Like, I'm not really good at articulating them, and I don't know who is. But like being together around the holidays. Yesterday was actually MADD's National Day of Remembrance. We've never done that before in that sense, and our vigil was already planned. So around the holidays, we always do a vigil because the holidays are obviously a hard time for people who've suffered a loss.
Of course.
And again, not that dying of a disease or dying from a drunk driver is easier or harder, but like there's some solace in like having answers. Cancer killed my relative, like I can.
And typically there's a preparation that might go along with that.
You might understand, and there just might be some understanding that I will never have because there's no good reason. There's not any good reason. There's no reason that my father isn't here today, except for somebody made some really bad decisions with his life and killed him. So I think that just some sense of being together, and the vigil is actually something that I avoided for a couple years as well because it's just not my thing, But then as I emerged as the leader of the organization, I felt like I needed to be there for other people too, and people want to. More so than anything, and this is the hardest part for me. People really just want to tell you their story, right?
Totally.
And I appreciate that, and I carry all those stories with me. But then that's a lot, So I've got Adam's dad's story, and I've got Nancy's daughter's story, and then I had this woman who came up to me at the national conference after I gave a speech at like one of the lunches. They asked me to speak, and she came running up to me and she just like hugged me and thanked me for what you did, and she said, "This is my grandson. I have to raise him because he lost his mother to a drunk driver and he didn't have a father." So so that story comes with me now too, and all of these people that are gone are with me when I speak and when I do all of the work that I do.
That's a really beautiful thing to say. It's a really good.
But it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you talked about your dad again, and I know January 24th is coming up.
Yes.
Which would mark year 7?
7.
7.
Mm-hmm.
What has the evolution of that anniversary been for you? What's your relationship to it? Is it evolved over time?
So it's interesting. In the last 2 years, I started this, I guess, tradition, for lack of a better word, where I do DUI ride along so I ride along with the deputy in a plantation who is like dedicated to DUI enforcement. It just, the first time, I don't even know how it started. I was in contact with him because I had Jenna ride along with him like around Labor Day, and I told him that the anniversary of my dad's death was coming up, and he was like, well, why don't you ride along with me, and we'll make sure that everyone, they do what's called a saturation patrol, where everyone that it's out on the streets is looking for DUI. So then he would get called out to more DUIs, hopefully. Cops are looking for it all the time, but like obviously there's if they are having an operation like we're having tonight, it's just heightened. So I said, what, that's a really great idea. So I rode along with him that night, and then last year we did it again, and we'll do it again this year. So it's all about just like all of my work with MADD is turning something really negative into something positive. So on that night we happened to arrest someone who was like belligerent and bitchy, and she was like, I'm a mother, I'm a good person, and she's screaming and swearing at a cop. And pissed off that she had to wait for so long and yelling at him like, my ex-husband.
You gotta wonder, what did she think the next morning?
Exactly. Or like for the rest of that night when she was like beating the walls in the jail cell. I mean, it was really embarrassing. But she and in all of these cases, I stay quiet, but I'm not being under arrest, so I can say whatever I want. And she like turned her attention to me at some point. Yeah. It's like, what? Because he was pulling up her history, and of course she had prior DUIs. And if you've been caught twice before, your third one, it makes it a felony. So a DUI is a misdemeanor, but if it's your third DUI
that it's a misdemeanor.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially if already the second time.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's what this interlock thing is really, because we know people reoffend. So we're trying to go for harsher punishment, and at least since it doesn't seem like we're going to get the felony, it's going to be a felony conviction. If they have an interlock, they can't do it again. So that's the idea behind the interlock laws, because I think that there's somewhere, and I don't know if it's bad volunteers or just, change in perception. Like, people decided that Mothers Against Drunk Driving was a group of old women who didn't want people to drink. I absolutely don't care if you drink. I don't care what you do. I mean, don't drink it to excess and hurt yourself physically, but don't get in the car.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's not like...
Yeah, but we're not prohibitionists. We just don't...
Bitches who want to piss all over your party.
Right, exactly. So it's...
really weird acronym.
That would be a funny acronym. But so there's that perception, and so I'm sitting in this cop car, and this woman all of a sudden she sees, because we're chatting, and of course it's her third one, and then I may have chuckled saying like, at least there'll be a harsher punishment, and she was like, what are you looking at, what are you two talking about, why are you here? And then I looked at the officer, who, as I always do, and he was like, you know what you want, and I was like, oh shit, like
here's about to come.
And I said to her, and I said, I'm here because my father was killed by a drunk driver 6 years ago today. And that could have been you. Oh, that couldn't have been me. And she was like fighting with me. And then I dropped it with her, and I continued talking to the officer, and we were on the way back to the plantation precinct, and she said, like, had one moment of clarity where she was like, I'm really sorry for what happened to you. And then she went back to yelling at
being
my
a bitch.
Yeah.
Belligerent.
But if she remembered that the next day, that there are real consequences, who knows? So I just try to do something positive with that day. It's a shitty week, to be honest with you. My dad's birthday would have been 4 days later. So
I knew it was close, but I didn't know it was that close.
Yeah, so he was killed on the 24th, and his birthday was the 28th. So I think in some respects, like, it's good that it all happens at once. Particularly, my grandmother is 94 years old, and so it's a really hard time for her. And I try not to remind her of it, because I'm obviously always conscious of it, and I post about it on Facebook, and I use it as an awareness generating tool.
Right.
But I don't like to bring it up for her. But obviously, she knows when his birthday is, and so she knows that it all comes together.
Right.
But so typically, I try to distract her. I try to do something positive, and try to just kind of move past it. This year, the kickoff for our walk, and it just so happened, and I wasn't thinking about when I did it, but maybe it will be positive. The kickoff for our walk is in the middle of that time too. So Walk Like Mad at Mad Dash kickoff is on January 27th at Art Serve here in Fort Lauderdale, and we're bringing in a victim speaker he lives in New Jersey, but he was in a crash here in South Florida. And
for the first time ever over the summer, he got the chance to come back and speak to all of law enforcement at our law enforcement recognition dinner, and he spoke so beautifully that I thought, like, I really want him to come speak to the community that supports MADD. So he's going to be there. So he's going to do the heavy lifting on like the victim speech this year, not me. But it's still it'll be an emotional time. But at least it allowed me in 1 week. It's kind of like the week that I did the vigil and the victim impact panel, and I went to MADD National for my first ever board meeting. It was all in 1 week.
Wow.
Like when I got home, I was really tired, but emotionally
exhausted, of course.
But I just try to make it positive. And there's no use in dwelling on it. There's no use in thinking about the unrest in my family that it caused. There's no use in thinking about all these things because you can't change it. Right. So the only thing that I can do is really like pay it forward in a sense. And make it positive. So that's what I try to do.
Like you mentioned earlier, this time of year is especially treacherous and dangerous. I mean, the numbers just go up.
Right.
And so I really wanted this podcast to happen now.
Right.
In fact, I've already recorded another one. I'm bumping it to the next week. So I want this, hopefully I'm going to try to get this out on Monday because I think it's that important. And,
absolutely.
I thank you so much for sitting with me and talking with me as we are beginning to wrap up. I mean, is there anything that else you would like to share or that you felt we didn't touch upon? Or
there's nothing that we didn't touch upon, but I think, and it's so simple that it just bears repeating again because I think it's something that people can dismiss as easy.
Yeah.
Is that, there are so many holiday parties coming up. I literally had 2 every night this week. When you put all those things on your calendar, I think it's really important to internalize how you're going to get home. I mean, there's someone at home that's going to miss you if you don't get home.
Right. That's a great way to put it too.
Or your parent who's
I
not
remember
there.
that there's a commercial.
The Budweiser commercial. That's a really good commercial, actually. That one actually got a lot of people talking and a lot of buzz on the internet. But yeah, I think that it's really about planning. I mean, and it's so simple when you think about it. Like everyone can just take that one extra step. If you know you're going to be drinking, and I don't even think it's a good idea to like play the game of 1 or 2 or whatever. It's bad weather. If everyone's drinking, everyone's texting. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Like you were talking about your dad subverting the car and getting in front of them. Like when I see people that a lot of times it's just people that are really bad drivers, but like people that I think are either texting or drunk, I won't get in front of them either because I don't want to be in front of them when they crash in the back of my car.
I know. Well, I think it was just the idea was just to get away.
But you can see people driving like really, really slow on the highway. They're like looking down.
That's the worst is when you see them
and they're like.
I was on a jog road or something like that, and I saw someone. I mean, he went a good swath of distance just looking at his. I'm like, look up.
Yeah,
you have a 2,000-pound vehicle around you. Look up.
Exactly, and I think people think that we've got the problem solved. Like MADD has been really, really successful. In the first 35 years, we've cut drunk driving deaths in half. It's really phenomenal. I mean, we just dipped under 10,000 drunk driving deaths a year, but 1 is too many, and almost 10,000 is too many, and 290 people injured by drunk drivers is too many. So we're working really hard on it. We've made a lot of impact, but we haven't fixed it yet. But the really compelling thing to me is that this is not, I'm not a doctor like my father was, but just like him, I have the power to save a life by making the right decisions.
Right.
So every single person that hears this should be empowered by the fact that they have the power to save a life. Could be theirs, could be someone else's, just by making the right decision about drunk driving. I think it's a really, when you think about it, like a common person that didn't go to medical school doesn't really think that they have that kind of impact on the world. But you do.
You do.
So.
You do. Because think about it in reverse.
Right.
It'd be just as impactful, so let's make it the right impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Heather, for doing this. Do you want to sign off the podcast? It's super easy.
Okay.
It's just going to be like, hey, this is Heather Geronemus with Curve the Cube.
Hey, this is Heather Geronemus with Curve the Cube.
Yay! Oh, and also make sure you mention the website one more time, just so people know it.
walklikeMADD.org/Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. Yay! Do you want to sign my guest book?
Yeah, of course.
Sweet.
You have successfully curved the cube.